Alright, this is going to be our in-depth horror discussion on the original Fright Night 1985.
Part 1.
Where we break down all the scenes, the deaths,
Scene by scene, break it down.
our opinions.
1985, Fright Night. It was a pretty tight vampire movie that came out in the 80s. Pretty good.
We decided to do this instead of... This isn't the remake one.
The original.
We're going to wait for that on DVD. Even though we heard good things about it from Anti-Slasher and whatnot.
Yeah,
and other people.
He said it was good, so...
it looks pretty decent. It looks watchable, enjoyable.
Yeah.
So anyway,
plus
we're going to do...
McLovin's in it, so...
They had to get someone decent for the Evil Ed character. Alright, so yeah, this is for fans of the movie.
Alright, so we'll break it down. Scene 1 starts off with the Columbia
if you've already
Pictures.
Seen it.
The classic 80s Columbia Pictures
80s Columbia
logo.
Pictures, yeah. All
Logo's
silent.
pretty tight.
It was sweet.
And then it cuts to freaking right from
First shot is the full moon.
Is the full moon and like
and
a
the
freaking
werewolf howling.
Which
I
is
thought
actually,
this was a vampire movie.
I know, but it's actually a freaking it's the
but
voiceover of a
they're
movie.
doing a voiceover.
Yeah, it's
no,
a movie
it's the
playing.
show, the Peter Vincent show.
Yeah,
as
vampire
we know.
guy character as a show.
Yeah,
he's a slasher vampire.
They just took Vincent Price's initials and switched it around. They're like, hey, let's keep Vincent, so no copyright intended.
Shit's retarded. The whole time I was thinking Vince Price every time I brought his name.
Then they're like, oh, this is the Fright Night, and it's badass.
Oh yeah, it's like
it seems like a sweet show.
Oh, in red, it's tight. Before he gets up, because the camera's trailing up to his house, going up to his window. And it goes to the TV.
He's a vampire hunter,
and it's pretty tight.
So anyway, while that's going on, it's like the couple making out,
cuts
like
to freaking
Al Mead and his girlfriend in 04.
Wow. And then it cuts to freaking it cuts to Charlie and his girlfriend Amy. And they're making out, and he's like, how long have we been going with each other?
We've been going for a year, and I haven't
like,
gotten shit from you.
I didn't even get anything from you.
Oh, and she's like, ugly.
And, and then she's like, alright. She's like, let's do it. Let's go into bed. And
he's still going out with her, even though he got
you really
nothing
mean
from
it?
her.
So then freaking she gets into bed and like takes off her 80s blouse. And then freaking out. And then in the middle of that, he's looking out the window and he sees freaking like two guys carrying the casket.
The coffin, yeah.
At
night.
And she's like, hold on. And he's like, hold on. And he whips out the binoculars and he's looking down there.
Oh, I know.
And
so he doesn't get any. So then she's like, alright, I'm going to give you some finally for the first time of the year. So he's got a year's worth of blue balls, but he decides to look at what his new neighbors are carrying.
And then, even before that, though, she was telling him to get off him freaking because Peter Vincent's on. She's like, you love him, don't you? Freaking, the horror guy. Anyways, so he sees the guys with the coffin, so then she runs out, she wants to leave, so he's like, Amy, he chases her downstairs, and then his mom's like in the living room, so they're gonna do it with like his freaking mom right there in the living room.
And she a virgin's tight pussy, and they like planned on doing it with his mom like watching Nightline at night. So anyway, she's watching the news. His mom's just like, "Did you guys have a love spat or something, like an '80s?"
She's like, it's more healthy to get it out before you're married.
And then they do the first news broadcast of someone died that night. Yeah,
while he's talking to his mom.
They found a body in the river or something.
And also, the mom mentions to him that someone did move next door. He's like, "Who's that next door?" He's like, "I've seen someone carrying something." She's like, "Yeah, it's the new neighbor that moved in."
So then it cuts the next day at the school. High school scene. He's just like, I'm in high school.
Yeah, it just establishes that like she walks by and they're like, she's still mad at him.
No, he's just like, the bastard gave us a pop quiz. And then
he's talking to his friend.
And it introduced us to Evil Ed, the infamous character. This is one of the best friend characters in a horror movie ever. You gotta love him. For any decade. He's hilarious, and the acting job is pretty hilarious.
His lines
He looks like
funny.
freaking Nate Dunning. It's Evil Nate.
Yeah, it is Nate Dunning hardcore.
So anyway, he drives.
Nate Dunning films.
He's like that's the point of a pop quiz, doofus. Anyway, so then he drives home in his freaking hot rod that's got a shitty paint job.
Wow, stole my line. It's a total shitty paint job. Freaking the red and white.
Say that. Who cares?
Wow. Let's go. So freaking he shows up and it's like a blonde like chick like that walks up to him. He gets to his front of his house and some chick's like parks next to him and she's like, "Hey, is this?"
Oh, she's like in the latest of 80s fashion.
Yeah, she's like in the latest 80s like hooker attire. Because because she's supposed to be a prostitute, and she's looking for the house next door. He's like, yeah,
so
it's next door.
the freaking vampire gets in. So the vampire moves to town, and he starts freaking sucking up all the 80s, early AIDS, like, from the 80s, all these prostitutes, even though he's, like, probably immune to all diseases after, like, being alive for, like, hundreds of years.
Anyway, so he freaking comes in, and he tells his mom, yeah, I'm just gonna go upstairs, do some homework.
Oh, then the mom's like, oh, yeah, he's got a live-in carpenter with him. It's 2 guys. She's like, yeah, I think he's gay, like Ryan88, 1988 from YouTube.
And then freaking, he's like, yeah. Queer? He's like, I'm just gonna go do some homework, Ma. So he goes upstairs and freaking starts doing homework. And then freaking...
Oh, then it cuts to that night. And he hears the scream.
Yeah, he hears the scream, and he looks next door, and he just sees the window kind of light on. And freaking...
So, yeah, they make you picture,
that he killed someone
raped and killed the prostitute.
So we just hear the scream. We don't see anything. He just looks out the window. So then it cuts to the next day, and he's at the local hangout where all the 80s kids go to get burgers.
At the burger joint.
We all go to get munchies. And then freaking out.
Because like we always say, that's the only thing to eat in America is frozen preservatives and burgers and fries.
Exactly.
So then he makes up with his girlfriend.
Yeah, so she's sitting there, and she's like, I was wrong. And he's like, what? Because he's expecting that, he was going to say sorry.
And she goes on to talk, and by this point, they've been going out for like over a year, and he just starts to zone her out every time she talks. And he hears the police report of another hooker dying.
Yeah, he freaking walks away from her while she's apologizing, and he freaking goes up, and then he sees his friend Evil is also there.
Oh yeah, Evil.
And Evil's he's like, yeah, I hear both the bodies had the heads chopped off.
Oh, tight. It was sweet horror line.
And he's like, you're sick.
Dialogue's pretty clever.
You're sick, Evil Nate. You know that?
There's parts of like filler on the second half, but the first half of the movie moves at a pretty decent pace. And then
it moves pretty good through the movie. Pretty decent pace. So then we know that freaking...
They play some sweet electro 80s beats.
So then you can get together that chick that came over to his neighbor's house, is the hooker, and freaking she got killed.
So then it cuts to he drives home in his freaking car, and he has a run-in with the neighbors, and it's just the... as we know, the carpenter guy, not Jerry.
Yeah,
we don't even get to meet Jerry.
He just gets home and he's looking at the neighbor's house, and he just runs over.
And the guy's painting his windows black.
And he creeps over there, and he freaking tries to open up the basement to the next doors to the neighbor's house, and freaking the guy's like, "Hey, what are you doing, kid?
Get the hell out of here!"
He's like, "Get the hell out of here!"
Then it cuts to at night.
Wipe that stupid look off your face.
And he's like eating junk food in his freaking room. Spying on his neighbor, like at the rear window, like that James Stewart.
Like it's Disturbia or something. He's got the binoculars and he's eating the food, and he's looking out.
I know, I swear, like whoever wrote this script was just like, is a fan of Rear Window. They're like, hey, I'll do that, but instead of his neighbor just being a killer, I'll make his neighbor a vampire. So it's pretty sweet.
We also
and they wrote a movie around that. Pretty sweet idea.
We forgot to mention that freaking back at the burger joint after freaking he sees, freaking the news report.
Hey guys, I forgot to mention.
No, his girlfriend comes up and freaking takes a kid's burger right next to him.
Spikes it in his face.
Puts her in his face.
Of course, you forgot to mention that, like a fag.
Wow.
Anyway.
Hey, I'm the first fag.
So then he invites another freaking hooker over.
First fag of the review right here.
Who would have guessed that?
Go on.
So he's watching horror movies too. He's a horror fan because he watches that show, obviously, like we were saying.
Yeah, so he's watching that Vincent.
Oh no! Then it goes into like slow mo, like freaking Risky Business style, and it shows the tit shot. And like Jerry, the vampire.
Because he's looking out across the way to next door, and it's freaking him. It's like some chick making out. It's like one of the hookers making out with the vampire.
And we see Jerry for the first time, the infamous villain, the main vampire of the movie.
And you can see like
he has fangs.
And he has like the freaking. They claws. First show his hands. Yeah, his freaking vampire hands with the long nails. And then he looks and sees freaking Vince. Or no, he sees Charlie.
So he sees and falls on tits. And what does he go to do? He tells his mom.
Nah, so he puts down the shades, and then he goes and freaking wakes up his mom, and he's like...
Yeah, after seeing tits, who goes to their mom?
And he says the guy freaking, who bought the house had fangs. He's like, the guys had fangs, Mom. And she's like, oh, yeah, fangs. Okay, that's great. I gotta wake up at 7.
So then what does it cut to?
No,
80s music playing.
Because while he's
and he goes outside.
No, while
he's
he's
telling
telling
check it out.
No, while he's telling his mom, he's looking out the window of his mom's window, and he sees him freaking opening the trunk.
Yeah, and they're loading. That's when he's outside
and
looking
then,
at. They're
then he
playing
runs
the tight
outside,
80s beat.
and freaking he's in the bushes, and he sees freaking the guy, the vampire, and his helper, the guy that lives with him. Freaking, they load in the body, and freaking he's eating an apple. And then his mom comes out and it's like, hey, come out. Freaking tells Charlie to come in.
So his mom doesn't believe. No, that's when he first like tells his mom like, hey, he's a vampire.
So the vampire is aware that freaking he's staring at him, watching him.
So then it cuts to the next day and he decides to go and tell the cop, and it's like, that's when they throw the minority character in there. They make it a black cop, typical 80s movie style.
80s, yeah. Let's get a black cop.
He's like, he's a vampire. I saw them.
And the cop's like, alright, so then freaking out. And then freaking the cop and Charlie show up at his front door, at the vampire's front door. And he's like, yeah, what's going on? So he's like, yeah, I'm a police officer. Yeah, I got some questions to ask you. He's like, yeah, and then freaking Charlie's telling him, yeah, that girl that came here last night, where is she? Yeah, he's like, yeah, dude, you're a vampire. He's like, yeah, there's probably a coffin in the basement. Let's go in the basement.
So then the cop blows him off. We don't even see. He doesn't even go to the cops. He's like, the rest of the movie.
The vampire's like, I was moving trash last night. It was just trash bags full of trash.
He should have just told him he was a serial killer since all these bodies are end up there.
Nah, so then Charlie's like, yeah,
theory.
Let's have him see a cross or something. And the cop's like, alright, this is too wacky.
He's got a Nate Dunning imagination.
Nah, so then the cop is like, alright, we're out of here. He's like, if I see you again, he's telling the cop, or like out front to Charlie. The cop's like, if I see you again, I'll arrest you if you mess around and do anything like this.
So then from there, he goes to the only person that he thinks that'll believe him. Freaking Evil Ed.
Yeah, he goes to his friend's house.
And he tells him, and that's when Evil Ed tells him how to defend a vampire. Even though he's a freaking fan of the freaking Vincent Price, or Peter Vincent.
And his friend's
show of the vampire hunter. And he would already know all the cliche ones. What?
True.
Garlic, cross.
He's like, he tells him about the holy water. No, he asks him first. He's like, when do you think the vampire will strike and when and where? And he's like, tonight, in my room. Charlie says that. And then freaking he's like, alright, well, you're gonna need some garlic. And then he's like, oh, holy water and,
But he still doesn't believe him that he's a vampire,
steaks.
obviously, because he lives in reality.
Oh yeah, and this is all freaking because Charlie gave him $8. He's like, come on, you gotta help me out, man. He's like, I got $8.
Even though they're best friends, like, he wouldn't help him out. He wouldn't tell him how to defend a vampire.
Yeah, I'm gonna pay someone $8 to find out.
How's he a horror fan and not know that?
What kills vampires? Like, come on, everybody knows it.
So then at home, so he goes home. Oh, and he's just like, also the vampire can't go there. He could have looked it up
on his 80s computer.
Also, the vampire can't go. We're gonna sum this part up, then we're gonna go to part 2.
So then freaking going.
He's like, also the vampire can't enter your house unless
he's
invited.
That.
So then he goes home, and what do you know? His freaking mom invited the vampire over. Script convenience already.
But he's upstairs though before freaking, and then he gets called downstairs because he doesn't know right away when he first
Jerry,
gets
put
home.
it there, sport. It's like the villain from Princess Bride.
And he's all hesitant. He's like, why did you let him in? She's like, 'cause he's a nice guy.
Alright, then we're gonna go to the infamous Jerry and freaking Charlie showdown.
Yeah,
so
we'll go to
part
2 of Fright Night, 1985.
In-depth horror discussion review. Mr. Creepshow 09
and JVM 2005.